Hello, everybody. Okay, sound check, everything. Everybody can hear me okay? It's good? Good. Louder? How's that? Cool. So, as they mentioned, I serve as president of the Hydroponic Society of America. We're a 40-year-old organization based out of Berkeley, California. And I've spent the last 30 years working in hydroponics and controlled environment agriculture, vertical farming, and all the related sciences and how it all fits together. 30 years in the industry. I've been president of the organization for about 18 years. And there are about 16 different sciences, which I'll talk about here, that all fit together to make up indoor growing. There's hobby hydroponics, and it doesn't have to be so scientific. You can just go and have fun growing. If you wanted to grow something for profit or for medicine, then you're probably taking it a little more seriously, and you want to have consistency in that output with what you get. And that's when knowing some of the science really comes in and is helpful to give you consistency and quality, and then hopefully good yields that can come from understanding some very basic things. So it's been very interesting being in California for the last 20 years and watching medical cannabis unfold. It started out in Oakland and was very delicately handled. The state was willing to look the other way on what the industry wanted to do. They passed some basic legislation and implemented this, and they pretty much left it alone. Until this year, till 2015, they haven't changed a thing about medical cannabis. It's pretty much stayed the same. And it's too bad. They missed a great opportunity. I was talking earlier about collecting data from patients over the last 20 years. How did this medicine make you feel? What was your reaction? All of this incredible information they could have gathered for everybody, they really missed that window, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is. A lot of people collecting taxes and looking the other way on what was happening. So, as the Hydroponic Society of America, maybe everybody here already knows what hydroponics is, but basically it's soilless growing. It's kind of technically how people refer to it. You're taking it out of the dirt and having a more sterile growing media. But I like to just say it means more food in less space with less water in less time. And all of those things, whether it's food or whether it's cannabis, it's a plus. If we can use less water, in California we're having massive droughts, using less water is critical. And less time, if we can get more crop turns in a year, that's only good for everybody that's involved in the growing process. Growing in less space, I teach a lot about vertical farming. Instead of just growing in a linear fashion, let's grow up. Instead of one level, let's have 8 levels and get 8 times the output. And it's starting to catch on around the world. You hear a lot about vertical farming, probably here in Hawaii too.
Get a little bit higher for you. Right there. Thanks.
Cool. Thank you. But I also teach that hydroponics doesn't mean whatever. That it's not just about the water, and it's not just about the plant food. There's all these other things going on in the grow room that are important to success. And as I was mentioned earlier, understanding some of the science helps with the yield, the quality, and the output, and the consistency that you're trying to get. Because when you grow something really great, you want to be able to do it again. So sometimes taking good notes and doing these extra steps will make a difference the next time you come around to grow. But in this industry, when you get online and you Google hydroponics, there are so many different opinions about this. And oh, I use this plant food, or I use that light, and I use these extra supplements, and I use one person uses carbon dioxide, and another person doesn't. You have a lot of opinion, and that's where hydroponics ran into a lot of trouble. That it came to just be, oh, you can use whatever, and it's all going to work out for you. That's not entirely true. If you have the best gear, but bad genetics, you're not going to do very well, or vice versa. You could have the best genetics and bad gear, and you're not going to be as successful as you want to be. So we'll talk a little bit more about the science, a little bit of the science behind hydroponics. It's a little washed out on the screen, but the basic elements of hydroponics are biology, engineering, chemistry, and physics. And again, not that you have to understand or have gone to college to taken these courses to understand these things, but that it is a life science, and it's not just throwing something in the ground and growing it. Sometimes that works out whether you're a farmer outdoors or whether you're growing indoors. You got to know a little bit about what's involved in it. Some of the other sciences, engineering, physics, plant science, understanding a little bit of that is very helpful. Entomology, understanding the bugs that may be getting into your grow room or get carried in, or fly in. Photobiology and light science, understanding how light and plants interact together is very useful when you're trying to understand all the information that's available. There are some basic styles of hydroponics. Maybe you're familiar with them, maybe not. Whether you're flooding and draining, or using a film of water, or dripping the water and nutrients, or spraying it, hydroponics traditionally just sort of means a fancy watering system for humans. It's automated. You can set a timer on it, and it will feed the plants on a schedule. And just so you know, I'm happy to take any questions. Don't feel, if you have a question as I'm going along, you can raise your hand and come down to the mic. I'm open to questions as they come up. If not, I'll take questions at the end. I could probably spend about half an hour talking about all these different styles of hydroponics. But I don't know that it's going to be the best use of the time. So I want to definitely take advantage of the time that I have here with you to convey the best information I can. Yeah.
If you had to pick one and say the best or useful, what would be your personal selection?
For best, I like to personally, I will use a simple grow bag and use Sunshine Mix or Pro Mix #1 and fill the bag up, and I'll water by hand. I like the interaction with the plants. I like to get in there every day and be involved in their growth and paying attention, listening to what they're telling me. And that's been a great benefit, being tuned in with the plants. Because if they're a little deficient, you'll see it. They'll maybe start turning a little yellow, or if you've overfed them and they start turning a little dark green. So as far as, again, if we look at hydroponics and maybe it's just a fancy watering system for humans, we want to get them the water and nutrient we need, whether it's by hand or whether it's automated. If you're doing cuttings, a lot of people enjoy doing aeroponics. You can get these little little tanks and put the cuttings in, and the water sprays at the roots, and the roots form really quickly, and you can go right into your growing media. So drip systems, you know, for larger plants are good, or if you're conserving as much water or need to conserve water, dripping is good. If I was growing lettuce, I would use NFT, which is popular in Australia. Almost all the fancy lettuce they grow is grown in these tubes. And they angle the tubes, and water comes in one end and flows through and out the other, and it recirculates. So then it comes down to what kind of plant food and how good is my water. You want to be able to have good quality water. But even if you're using tap water, that's fine. If I'm at home, I don't go buy special water or run it through a reverse osmosis system. I use tap water, you know, and I pH balance it and add my nutrient. But you'll read online, a lot of people advise you to use special filters and do RO. You don't necessarily need all of that extra equipment to be able to have a successful grow. And I don't know, would we have more hobby growers here, or are there commercial growers here? Large hobby? Anybody doing large scale hydroponics? It's mostly smaller growers? Okay, it's good to know. So I know there are hydroponic stores here in the islands that you can go to buy equipment, and they sell different types of these systems. But the bottle culture of hydroponics, they make a bottle for everything. There's bottles for supplements and hormones and grow and bloom and trace elements and all of these bottles. And people buy these things and go home, and sometimes they'll fail. And you go back to the grow shop and they say, well, I've got another bottle here that will fix your problem. Go try this. It'd be like going to an aquarium store and getting a saltwater tank and a freshwater fish. And you go home and you kill the fish, and you go back to the aquarium store and they say, well, my fish is dead, what do I do? And I say, well, here's another bottle you didn't get the first time you were here, and here's another fish. And they'll send you home a lot of times people will fail that way because it's not whatever. I can't use whatever and put it in my nutrient solution, in my tank, and feed my plants and expect to be successful. This product here, over here in the corner, is called Liquid Light. And they tell you that it enhances photosynthesis. Well, anything you pour into the nutrient solution isn't going to make a plant photosynthesize that much better. So there's a lot of marketing. To a certain degree, plants only get there to give them good light energy, and we want to give them good food energy. And when you have a good full spectrum food and a good full spectrum light, you'll get better quality plants if your genetics are good. You have to excuse me, I've been talking all day. The other part of the industry is more is better. More food, more CO2, more supplements, more sprays. That somehow all that will give you more yield, and that's really not true. Plants don't need to be overloaded with things that they already have plenty of. I don't need to. If a plant is efficient at using red light, I don't need to bombard it with a lot of red light. And that's what the high pressure sodium light is all about. It'd be like giving a plant all base. That's what plants like, full spectrum light. They evolved for millions of years with the sun, and we as humans don't get to reinvent what plants want. They want what they want. Now, as humans, we're trying to give them man-made light. So all we can do is make light as close to the sun as we can as humans mechanically to give to the plants. So like the sun doesn't flicker, it doesn't turn on and off like a fluorescent light. So we don't want to maybe use fluorescence to grow plants because fluorescent light flickers. 60 hertz lights flicker. Digital lighting, some flickers and some doesn't. So the concept of more has driven this industry for 30 years. More is better. More, more, more. It's good for the hydro store, but not good for the wallet, not good for the plant, not good for the planet when you're having all this extra runoff running into the ground or into the water table. So it's something I hear a lot, that more is better, but more is not better. And this kind of leads into the grow rooms have a high, typically indoors, there's a high cost of operations. The cost of running the lights, the cost of the fertilizers, the cost of heating and cooling. You know, then people's time, you know, time is money. We have to spend more time in the grow room than we wanted. That really should be added into the cost of operations. In Colorado and Washington and California, cost of operations has gotten to be so high that growers aren't making any money. And in Colorado, some of the best grows, the biggest commercial growing operations are profiting 7 and 8%, which is pretty small. If you're an investor and you spent $1 million, to have a business making 7 or 8% profit isn't good for the bottom line. So in Tacoma, Washington, there's one growing operation that takes 1/4 of all the energy for the city of Tacoma. All the 1,000-watt lights, all the heating and cooling systems. It's like putting a big heater in a room and then buying an air conditioner to cool that heater. It just ends up costing a lot of money. Growers doing the same thing can't be allowed the way they've always done it. There's always been black market cannabis. And now black market cannabis is trying to become gray market. It's trying to come out of the shadows into the light. But so many of the tools are from the black market. The science is from the black market. In all those days when power was cheap and it didn't cost so much. You know, they didn't pay 50 cents a kilowatt hour like you do here in Hawaii. To be efficient and sustainable here, you want to have the best quality and be as efficient as you can be with the tools that you use. So status quo growing will only slow you down, slow down the plant growth, or give you unnatural cannabis that's been force-fed by humans, forced extra hormones and supplements so the grower could get more yield and make more money. But so for home growers, you don't need all that stuff. At home, you can have a simple plant food and a simple lighting system and simple environmental control. It doesn't have to be so complex. Using the old gear creates a lot of problems in the grow room, like mites, aphids, mold. I've walked through some of the biggest grow operations in Colorado, and every operation had mold and bugs, and it's pretty gross. It's not where you want to be, but it can happen so easily bugs come in on our clothing, or bugs come in through vent fans, or like mold. In California, the mold is in the fog. So in the Bay Area, when it gets foggy, it's tough to grow without getting mold. You're pretty much guaranteed to get it. So it's challenges that people don't need. It's when you're tearing and throwing away crops, it's not good for anybody. Powdery mildew starts in the veins of the leaves and spreads from there, and it spreads quickly. Part of one of my big concerns with cannabis is that people understand is as it relates to toxicity. When you put a lot of pesticide or fungicides on the plant, you're spraying foliar sprays, and the plant has those sticky trichomes on it, the resin glands, things stick. Pesticide sticks, fungicide sticks in those trichomes, and then people harvest it and dry it, and it's still there. And then people go home and burn it. And we really don't understand the long-term effects of smoking pesticides, smoking mold. So it's important to make the best, healthiest plants we can to avoid having to put sprays on them. So in California for 20 years, they test for THC and CBD, but they aren't doing the testing for contaminant like they should be. Without those contaminant testing, we really don't know what you're smoking. And I'm very passionate about consumer safety and wanting people to be healthy. And it's something anybody growing at home, be conscientious of what you spray on your plant, because at a certain stage of growth that will stick in those glands and it'll be there forever. The government can't understand all of the things that a grower needs to know to be a good grower and grow successfully. It's government. They don't understand life science. They're not going to. They understand collecting revenue and taxes. They understand legislation and making rules. But medical cannabis can't be done right the first time. It's impossible. It's never been done. Therefore, it can't be done right. So California got it wrong. Washington, Oregon, Colorado. But it's important, there's so much need for people, as you've been hearing today, for medical application. And, I myself, I'm just going to kind of share something personal, unscripted. In 2014, I was diagnosed with cancer in the head and neck. And I still suffer with, even now, talking for really long periods of time. My speech patterns aren't what they used to be because I got radiated from here to here. So I've been talking all day and here talking now, and I start to lose the ability to form words. So I vaporize cannabis to help stabilize some of that effect. And I think everybody has their own ailment or has a family member who's suffering that you want to help. And We just want to have something clean, non-toxic, it's healthy that we can give to maybe to our kids, like Myra was talking about, for seizures or. And then there's a lot of talk about organic, but organic is a feeling that we get that we want when we want that safe cannabis. We want it to be non-toxic. But organic itself doesn't really fit the model of what we're trying to do. A plant will make an organic inorganic to absorb it. So putting organics onto a plant is giving it more work, extra stress. And the best thing you can do as a grower is to take stress away from the plants. Whether it's in the root zone, with good light, no bugs, good temperature and humidity. We want plants to be like humans. We don't want to be stressed out, and we're at our best when we're not stressed. So, let's see what time it is. What I'd like to do is stop talking and maybe just take some questions and listen to what people have to say. So I've been talking quite a bit. I'd be interested in hearing more about, what you folks have.
Yes, hi. Is this working now?
I personally can't hear it, but I can hear you from here.
When you talk about organics, you say don't need to use like an organic base to try to please folks about organics that the plant makes it itself. How does that work?
Well, organics has become very confusing. The USDA has really bastardized the word organic and took it from the original intention of being safe, being clean. But what we found is that even people using organic farms and organic methods in California, they found many people cheating the system, spiking the fields to get their yields back up. But I think what people really want when they hear organic, like we were talking about, is something safe, something clean and non-toxic. Is it gonna be okay if I'm gonna sit down here? And that warm, fuzzy feeling that we get when we think about organic, we can do by giving the plant 4 weeks of water, 5 weeks of water instead of 2. Flushing the plant properly and putting other organic elements on the roots isn't always the best thing for the plant. It made us feel good to put it on the plant, but it wasn't really what was best for the plant to absorb and have that nutrient available. So organics has created a lot of confusion, but I really do appreciate that people want safe, clean, healthy cannabis. So I hope that answered the question. I know organics is a big topic, and there's a lot of debate. And you hear people, you hear the show even talking about organics. And that's what the frame when I talked about, or hydroponics doesn't mean whatever. But it's really become to mean whatever to people that are growing. You can use whatever plant food and whatever light and you'll be fine, but that's not entirely true. Anybody else? Questions?
Amsterdam alumni. When they taught us in Amsterdam, everything was supposed to be grown indoors. Wouldn't a way to save money would be to make a greenhouse that had a roof that opened during the daytime? Like here, the climate is good 350 days a year. I mean, wouldn't it make sense? I had 2 questions.
Oh, well, what's your other question?
And the second question is, there's a farm out in Mainland that It's a fish farm, but they take the water from the fish and grow the crops. That's nitrogen, right?
There's probably there's two questions there. One about aquaponics, and the first question was about the light in the greenhouse. The greenhouse model with a retractable roof, there's a common perception that the sun is free and that we can just use the sun and we don't have to pay a price, or the plant doesn't have to pay a price for being in the sun. But what photobiology teaches us is that a plant can take so much light, and then at a certain point it shuts down. That's why trees are round and plants are round. Part of the plant is in shade and part's in sun, and all day long it's balancing itself out. It's getting too much light and then not enough light. So the sun is actually delivering twice the energy that plants need to photosynthesize. Sorry, I gotta stay mic'd here. Is that gonna be okay? Yeah. So a greenhouse was made to help bring plants into the field early for farmers who wanted to get a jump on spring. And it grew into becoming a Dutch model of food production that spread around the world. But greenhouse, it makes the natural light artificial. As soon as those photons of light hit that glass, it breaks the photons and it becomes less efficient. So it's filtering the light almost. So we're not getting all of the benefit of the natural sunlight, the UV and other things being in the greenhouse, even though they are popular. Being outdoors or having an open roof where the wind, anything blowing in the wind can stick in those resin glands. Dust, dirt, bugs, leave their bug feces and casings. And so going outdoors is, you're bound to the limitations of Mother Nature. When you go outdoors here on the islands, when your average day is 13 hours, you can bloom like crazy, but you can't veg very well because the days aren't long like they are in Iowa or in Nebraska or Minnesota or in the Salinas Valley in California. You're bound to the limitations of the photo period here on the island. So your latitude and longitude and where you are in the world makes a difference. And it almost, you have to adjust for different areas. So it's not one size fits all. That I do the same thing in Siberia that I'm going to do in the desert, or I'm going to do in Hawaii, or I'm going to do in Canada. Latitude and longitude make a difference in how you EQ that grow room to be successful. And on the issue of, I hope that answered the question about greenhouses. It's yesterday's the future, because right now there's not enough food in the world to feed all the people that are on the planet. Even with all the farmers farming and all the greenhouse people greenhousing, there's still not enough food. And that's where vertical farming and other methods have been developed to get more food in less time. So now about aquaponics, it's interesting because people love the idea. Take the food, the roots, and the plants feed the fish, and the fish feed the plants. It sounds beautiful, but the truth is, plants don't like fish waste, and fish don't like plant waste. So putting them together is actually pretty inefficient. It's two different sciences people want to put together but don't fit together very well. So I can take that fish water with nitrogen, and I can enhance it and add the other things into it that I need, so I have a complete solution. But I can't just take the fish waste and use that only to feed the plants. It's not enough. You need a well-balanced fertilizer with as many of the macro and micro elements. Now, I personally, my favorite of all the nutrients I've ever tried is Dynagrow, because a long time ago, when this industry was very young, somebody figured out how to take all those elements and put them all in one bottle. It had never been done before, but the person who did it didn't know it couldn't be done. So they made this plant food, and I use it in all of cannabis production and food production projects that I work on, because it was made, it's a full spectrum food for full spectrum light. So there are many nutrients and foods to choose from. I just mentioned the one that I personally like. It's well balanced and meets the needs of the plant. I'm a non-profit organization. My agenda is a little different than, you know, others who are in this for profit. I'm here to teach and educate, and if somebody wants to do something high end, I can teach high end. If they want to do low end, I can teach low end. If you're a hobbyist or a commercial grower, we can help you find what it is you need to do what you want to do and grow what you want to grow. So, questions? Anybody? Let's see how I'm doing on time here. It's just 5 now. I can stop here, or I can continue on with some other frames. Sure.
I just started to learn how to farm column.
Say it again. You'll hold up
I'm
closer.
just starting to learn how to farm column.
Okay.
And what my question is, we're doing dry land farming. We don't use any fertilizers. Our issue is aphids. How can I control aphids naturally without shooting them with the water hose?
Shooting with the water hose. Yeah, aphids are a nuisance. They definitely are. They breed really quickly and they're hard to control. But not fertilizing the plants really makes them weaker and more anemic. They don't have the benefit of the elements that can help make them strong. The stronger, because bugs only like weak plants. It's like out in nature, some trees are infested and some trees aren't. They could be right next to each other. One tree was healthier and one wasn't. So bugs will zoom in and attack a weak plant. So sometimes it can be genetically related. If the genetics are weak and you take cuttings from cuttings, those genetic traits are passed on. And sometimes you have to go back to seed and start again and breed stronger plants and help make them more immune. Fortifying the root zone with potassium silicate is a good defense for plants. When plants are young and they don't have resin glands, like cannabis, you can spray on the plants. And that's a chance to spray something and help protect them against aphids while they're young, so that when they're older, they're tougher and have better defense. So what you want to focus on is a better defense for the plants so they're tougher. And sometimes the sugar level in a plant, the bricks, can be low, too low, that bugs will just seek it out and find it and attack it and destroy it. That's evolution. Plants feed, or bugs feed on weak plants. That's nature. It's always going to happen.
For example, some of the taro,
Say it again.
some of the taro that we grow,
Yeah.
with many varieties. Some of them they seem weaker, some of them are healthier per se. We were suggested to use neem oil, neem spray,
Yeah.
and it does help, but it was also told that it's being absorbed by the leaves into the root. So they told us not to just, go to town with it. So I understand what you're trying to explain to me about the defense part.
Yeah, and exactly. Neem is a great product as a first line of defense. That's not something like taro. You're not smoking it. If you smoke neem oil, it'll give you a headache. But it's a good line of defense. But bugs adapt and evolve very quickly. Do you want to talk about neem?
I just want to say one thing. Using the neem oil,
Using the Protect along with the neem oil works as a great surfactant, so they work good together, especially to get rid of those aphids. And your weaker plants, if you notice, should get stronger.
This is Greg Neal from Dynagrow, the nutrient that I mentioned. We're in a booth together down here at the end, towards the entrance. And neem oil is certainly a line of defense, but not the bugs will adapt and they'll get tougher and breed. You can have tougher varieties as they're adapting to what you're doing. So it's not maybe not necessarily eliminate the problem entirely. There's a source, it's coming from. So it's part of the struggle of outdoor farming. You're at the mercy of Mother Nature. Sometimes I come from generations of corn and bean farmers in Iowa. So I get to hear what it's like for them to be at the mercy of Mother Nature. And then I do indoor farming where I'm not. So we have very different conversations at the table. But no, what you're facing is very common. So products that are rated for fruit and vegetable crops that you can use are out there. I would talk to an agronomist or do you have an agronomist here? No. And talk to the local university. USDA extension agents can help provide you with the best defense against aphids for an outdoor crop like taro. Questions? Yeah.
If a grower wanted to experiment with soil and hydroponics in the same grow room, is that a bad idea? Maybe separate grow rooms?
Soil and hydroponics in the same grow room. In the same grow room. Well, what I would caution is that you make sure the soil is sterilized and the growing media is sterilized, because the way they bag soil, they dump huge piles of dirt and mix it all up and then throw a tarp over it and let it bake in the sun, where bugs and pathogens and anything can climb into that growing, whether it's soilless like ProMix or whether it's dirt. Growing media can be contaminated. And now there's rock wool and grow rocks, but roots hate rock wool and roots hate grow rocks. So I don't tend to recommend them. But you can put them in the same room if it's a hobby, it's a small thing. It's not going to hurt anything, but be aware that there's a risk of cross-contamination if one of those medias is contaminated. But otherwise, and remember, the container shapes the plant. This controls how big the plant gets, and the depth controls the height. So if I want to grow a wide, short plant, I get a wide, shallow container. If I want to grow a tall citrus tree, I might get a citrus pot. And so the first thing a root does is seek out to see how big it can get. And it sets those markers, whether it's in the field or whether it's in the greenhouse. Plants know how they're spaced, and they grow according to what they learned when they put out their roots. It sets those signals when they're really little for what they're going to look like when they're big. So a fruit tree or an apple tree, the roots are as wide as the tree. So it's one of those interesting facts of evolution and the way plants evolved over time and the way they communicate with each other. So, questions? Anybody? There's obviously a lot to learn, but I don't want to overcomplicate it for people who are going home to have a growing operation. You have a space in mind, maybe you want to start some plants indoors and put them outdoors. Gardening is a passion and a hobby and a love. It's America's #1 hobby. Americans spend about $90 billion a year on gardening supplies. It's a huge, not just hydroponics, but all gardening. It's an epic number, and when you have it in your blood and you love to grow, you love being around the plants, and for me it makes me feel better to interact with the plants. And don't get frustrated if you kill a plant. Don't blame yourself because you maybe went and bought a saltwater tank and a freshwater fish. It wasn't your fault. Somebody sold that to you. And I always recommend keep it simple. Plants want the sun, same as humans do. They want full spectrum light. They don't want red light, they don't want purple light, they don't want just red and blue. They want all the color all the time. Plants reflect green light to make chlorophyll, but they absorb green light for all the other pigments that make photosynthesis happen. So we can't just take a color out of the spectrum and expect the plant will do the same. It's going to be very different. Humans don't get to change what plants want. So if you're giving them a basic fertilizer, whether it's powder, whether it's liquid, I told you my personal preference, I like Dynagrow. I don't put organics, I don't put shit on the roots, pardon my French, because it's not nature. It's not nature for a cow to do its business right there on a crop in the cornfield. We don't want to smoke those things or eat those things. I recommend flushing plants with water for weeks and weeks. Give that water a chance to purge all the food. So if the leaf is green on a cannabis plant, there's food in the plant. If the leaf is yellow and falling off the plant, then the plant used and metabolized all the food that was in the leaf. So, it's a rule of thumb. If the leaf is green, there's food in the plant, and you can keep letting it go. Or you're smoking some of those fertilizers, the nitrates, the phosphates, the trace elements. Again, there's no studies really done about the effects of people smoking. Yeah, there's tests about eating it and having it in a water supply, but not about smoking it. So be careful as you go out there to buy gear. Keep it simple. And remember evolution, the sun, and nature, and you'll do a lot better. The plants will do better. Take as much stress away from the plants. You don't want it freezing cold at night, super hot in the day. Like humans, we kind of want the same temperature and humidity. If it's in a good zone, we do real well. If it's too hot, we feel tired or we want to be in the shade. Plants are the same. If you're growing indoors and you put plants in a closet, I suggest you get in the closet with the plants and shut the door and see how that feels. If you're comfortable in there with the plants will be fine. If you get too hot with the lights it's kind of bugging you, then something's wrong. It's not going to be as healthy for the plants. And we want to take as much stress away from them as we can, as a rule of thumb. So you're going to hear a lot of talks about advanced growing. There's a lot of books, a lot of opinion. But I teach science. And to me, it's not about opinion. Nobody is going to go home and research something and learn something new that wasn't figured out already. Anything brand new is untested. Anything untested will have to be tested over 10 years to show that it's proven and it works. So if it's brand new, I'd stay away from it. If it's been out for decades like Dynagrow, it's proven to work. And I can have confidence recommending it or recommending a certain kind of full spectrum light. I know that it works. Science proved that it worked. It's not a maybe, it's not whatever. It's what's really real. And Einstein once said, if we knew what we were doing, we wouldn't call it research. So anybody doing research is in an infantile stage of development. They're still learning. And it takes, after 30 years of doing this, I've gotten to see what works and what doesn't work, what failed and what was successful and why. Because I've been doing it for 30 years. I just have the benefit of having to have seen those things. And that's why I teach and educate, to share those experiences, why we use high pressure sodium light, why people think that. Carbon dioxide. You don't need to add carbon dioxide to a plant. There's plenty in the air. There's enough CO2, as we all know from people who talk about global warming, man doesn't need to pump more CO2 into a grow room from a bottle and then dump that CO2 back out into the environment. If you bring fresh air in, it's naturally carbon sequestering. So it's back to that concept of more. More is not better. More food, more fertilizer, more CO2. It's not a good method of growing. So I hope that some of these tips are helpful for you as you go out. And Hawaii has been given the gift of being able to grow medical marijuana, and I hope that the state is spared the mistakes of California. 20 years of nonsense. Colorado is making a lot of mistakes right now. They're recalling a lot of their cannabis because there's pesticides in it. So if it's in the cannabis, then it made it to the edibles, and it made it to the oils and the topicals. Those pesticides never left the plant. It's in there to stay. And we all want healthy, safe, non-toxic cannabis for people, for ourselves, and the people we love, and the people who are suffering. They deserve to have the best. And I'm sure open to any other questions if anybody has any. Gerald Garrison, who was scheduled to speak after me, is not available. He won't be here for the final speech of the day, so I think I'm the last one as far as I know. If we run over, which I think we did, it's about 5:15. So, yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
So good, I just asked one question.